I'm going to be sharing my experiences with the Shrimp King Complete shrimp food in this video. I've been using it around a month now, and I've been using it in two different tanks that both have cherry shrimp and Amano shrimp. The first one is my dedicated shrimp tank, and the second tank is the 29-gallon community tank. So first up, the most important thing, will the shrimp actually eat it? The cherry shrimp do eat it, and I've seen them eat the pellets countless times now, but they definitely seem hit and miss with cherry shrimp. Some days they'll come right over and start eating it, and other days they just will not pay it any attention and they'll just stay wherever they are grazing on algae or biofilm. I usually use this food formula 2 or 3 times a week as well in both tanks, so it's not like they're getting it every single day and they just get full and don't want to eat the next day. There is at least a 1-day gap between using this food in both tanks, so I really don't know why the cherry shrimp sometimes really like it and sometimes they just ignore it. Next up we have the Amano shrimp, and they definitely eat it and they seem a lot more consistent in my experience in both tanks as well. But one thing is, in the community tank, the Amano shrimp definitely do seem to prefer leftover fish food rather than the Shrimp King Complete formula, but they definitely do eat it, and in my experience the Amano shrimp eat a lot more of this than the cherry shrimp do. I've actually seen some shrimp on shrimp aggression from the Amano shrimp towards the cherry shrimp over the Shrimp King Complete formula as well. It is rare, and the vast majority of the time both species of shrimp will be there eating on the pellets together without issue, but every now and then one of the bigger Amano shrimp will try and bully the cherry shrimp away from the pellet to try and keep it for itself. Another thing to note is that a fully grown Amano shrimp can lift a full pellet if it wants to. This might make it a bit of a pain to clean the tank after the 24-hour wait period if the Amano shrimp picks a pellet up and goes off and hides it somewhere to try and eat it for itself. In the community tank, my Corydoras do actually nibble on these every now and then. It is a little weird. They try and nibble it and then they'll get bored and go off and look for something else, and they won't find anything else unless it's feeding time, and if there's no other food they come back, then they nibble it a little bit more. But the other fish in the community tank pay them no attention at all. There is actually a small benefit of the Corydoras eating the Shrimp King Complete pellets as well, because they break them into these tiny little particles, and the cherry shrimp just seem to be able to eat those a lot easier. So moving on to price, and in my opinion these are very expensive for what they actually are. In the UK they are £13 for a shrimp food pellet. Yeah, you do get a fair few of them in there, and it is intended to be a more well-rounded, nutritionally complete food for shrimp, considering a lot of shrimp will just eat algae in the fish tank anyway, or biofilm, they'll eat leftover fish food and other stuff like that. So moving on to the ingredients, and as you can see the vast majority of the stuff in here is a natural ingredient and we can understand the name of it. And similar to my own diet that I eat for myself, I try to avoid long science words that I don't really understand what they mean. I try to keep the simple stuff what I understand, and there's not really many science words in here. One thing that I would mention is that to my knowledge there's no calcium in the Shrimp King Complete formula, which is a little strange because it's marketed as a complete food formula. If you do want calcium you have to go with the Shrimp King mineral formula. You can get small little calcium cubes that are a lot cheaper though, so realistically they're probably going to be a better option for most people, especially if you're on a budget. The pellets are of different length, but I'd say they average around ½ an inch each, which is around 1.5 centimeters. The official recommendation is that you give 0.2 of an inch of a pellet per 20 shrimp, and I just smash one in half and throw it in the tank. But the problem is 20 shrimp is pretty open-ended. Like I mentioned earlier, my Amano shrimp definitely eat more of this than my cherry shrimp. So is it 20 Amano shrimp or 20 cherry shrimp? So keep an eye on that. Around 24 hours after adding the pellet to the tank, I remove anything that's left because fungus does start to grow on them quickly in my experience, so make sure you remove anything that's left after around 24 hours. One little trick that I have came up with is I basically get these little pots. It's just what the Java moss comes in if you get it from Tropica. I keep them because they're very useful. I add a little bit of boiling water to this, put the Shrimp King pellet in there for about 5 minutes until the water cools. It softens it and then I put it into the tank, and the shrimp seem to be able to eat it a lot quicker. Just for anyone that's wondering, I am currently checking my water parameters every day in my community tank for another video just to do a little test, and I didn't notice any changes in any of the core water parameters. So moving on to alternatives, and like I mentioned earlier, my shrimp definitely seem to prefer other foods to these. Bug bites is definitely a big hit with my Amano shrimp. I see them in the community tank, my Amano shrimp come over, they're very confident now and they'll just take a bug bite off my fish and run away with it, and then they'll eat it in peace. So yeah, For Amano shrimp, I definitely say go with bug bites. I know the bug bites aren't nutritionally complete for Amano shrimp, but like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be eating other food sources in the tank anyway, like algae and stuff like that. So they're going to be getting other vitamins and minerals. So it's more they really enjoy that food, so give it the bug bites. Another food that my Amano shrimp seem to really enjoy is bloodworms, but my Amano shrimp don't really finish the bloodworms and they swim off with them and leave them all over the tank, so it's a pain to clean up, so it's very rare that I give them bloodworms. And then for the cherry shrimp, like I mentioned earlier, they really just prefer algae. In both tanks, they're either on the Java moss in the shrimp tank eating the algae there, or they are on the driftwood in the community tank eating the algae and biofilm there. They do come down and eat the Shrimp King Complete every now and then, but it's nowhere near as much as the Amano shrimp, and provided there's plenty of algae and biofilm, I don't plan on target feeding my cherry shrimp anymore. They just don't care. They're just happy with the algae, their biofilm. They're on their driftwood or their Java moss. They don't care about anything else. So just to round it off, personally, I'm not going to buy this again. It's more the price point than anything else. I just think it's too expensive for what it is. My shrimp do eat it, but they also eat other foods like I mentioned that I carry anyway because I feed them to my fish. So I rather just buy them because I know my shrimp will eat anything that's left over or actively steal it in the case of bug bites. But yeah, if you want to try them, crack on. They are expensive. Personally, if you have Amano shrimp, I'd highly recommend you try bug bites over these, or they really do seem to enjoy them in both tanks. I will leave affiliate links for both products in the video description, but personally, I really wouldn't recommend Shrimp King because of the price point.